Hello, everybody, and welcome to I think it is our 69th Dissipation of Glamour Initiative webinar. And we are working our way through this wonderful book, Glamour, a World Problem, which was given out as lesson sets to a particular group of 9 people. Well, eventually it was 9 when the personnel was complete. And their instructions have been assembled and put into a book which we can very profitably study. So I just want to welcome you all here, and just Alexandra, Angela, Anne, Annette, Ariel, Barbara, Bianca, Bibi, Carl, Lysia, Deborah, Frederic, Gail, what is it? Excuse me, I think I went a little too far. Yeah, Gail, Gregory, Gretchen, Helen, Jean-Pierre, Joan and John, Yopie, Karen Gritzka, Karen Johansson, Catherine, Maria, Marianne, Mariut, Martha, Michael, Natnia, and Olivia, and Risto, Rose, Suzanne, Tiffany, Victoria, and BL and Joe are backing us up on staff, and so we're in good shape. The image that you see before you is the egoic lotus image. This is Tuija's redo of it with more authentic colors, and this is being made available to you in the handouts so that you can study something that is a little more authentic than the one that has all of the red in the petals, which apparently is not existing, although the first ray, egoic lotus, will have tinges of red, within the causal body, but not as one of the main colors in the petals. So, and this has certain, I think Michael brought this up, or someone did the other day, where is the modification of this image, and here it is for you, and it has each one of the tiers of petals pointing to one of the 3 higher subplanes of the mental plane. Let's see. Yes. Well, pretty close to that. Anyway, pretty close to that. So, okay, friends, what we're doing is working our way through the book. Now, what Master DK tried to do with his group of 9, once they became 9, because in a way, the book Glamour, the particular instructions dealing with the origin of glamour and the healing of glamour, did not begin to occur until the group personnel was entirely filled out. These were groups in formation, these C groups, and such was the condition of the world that he never got further than the political group, which was left incomplete. There were only 3 members of the political group, but by that time, 9 members existed. In the first telepathic communicators, the glamour group, what you call observers of reality, they were called, the healing group, and the education group. 9 existed in all of those, but he could not carry that to fruition. And yet we all do understand that the Seed Group project is a 275-year project. So even though almost a century has passed, not quite really, 80 years something, since all of this was begun, there's still plenty of time to resume and work this out with a more enduring and informed and illumined personnel in the coming decades. So hopefully, we'll probably find ourselves involved in some of that work and involved in the work of the gradually emerging new esoteric schools. So let me see what I can find here. Yeah, okay. So we ended number 68, and we're beginning our academic reading here for number 69. And Now DK is getting very practical for us, and we want to be able to do the things that he is suggesting. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily your seed group. It may be for some, and it may be possible to participate in more than one, but there's a lot we can learn whether or not our major service is coming forth on in relation to this group. So if aspirants will do three things: develop the power to visualize, train the mind to intuit reality, and rightly interpret that which is seen, and then a laboratory can be created. Okay, well, this power to visualize, it's very related to the ability to memorize and to see one's memories. I oftentimes try to work with people. I say, can you recall this? Can you see the image of this memory? And basically, this is visualization. And when you can begin to rearrange memories and impressions that have been made upon your consciousness, then you can get into the act of creative visualization, the creative imagination. You can take things from wherever, put them in whatever relationship, and somewhere here between the pineal gland and the pituitary body is an area of the etheric brain, involving also the astral body, where these images begin to occur. Now, people who are on the first or seventh ray, now, of course, seventh, how about that? Seventh ray, are not as good at this initially. And so he says, well, that's why Masonry is so important, because basically it's all being acted out in front of you, and the first ray and seventh ray people per se, and probably this is souls more than anything else, do not have as keen an ability to visualize, and so they need to see an enactment in the sensory world in order to understand the images which are important. But I want to say that if other rays are present, which are those rays which are strongly connected with visualization, such as the fourth and maybe the second or the sixth, the soft line, then there's no reason why an essentially first ray or seventh ray person cannot have this power to visualize. So anyway, try to recall certain memories, see them as clearly as you can in your so-called mind's eye, and then anticipate other things that may happen using similar images, and just rearrange them in your inner psyche, and try to be as clear about it as you can be, and hold the image and see how your powers of visualization can occur. So visualization is very important in all the work we do, and it is a major link with the Buddhic or intuitional plane. So it's part of training the mind to intuit reality. Now, what is reality? Well, you're not going to get a whole lot of reality unless, let's see if I can find this, unless we can focus our consciousness using the Antakarana in the areas above the lower 21 subplanes. There is what I might call some transitional reality on the higher three levels of the mental plane, but to see clearly with what Master Moria calls straight knowledge is found beginning with the Buddhic plane. So we have to get ourselves into that clear space of the Buddhic plane in order to begin to use the pure reason and see things as they truly are. Now, obviously, all of our psychic images and many things that are arising in our consciousness that reflect the lower physical world, they get in the way. So we have to be able to quiet all that down, and use the Antakarana in order to begin intuiting reality. And then to rightly interpret that which is seen, and that is a mental function. I want to just say, here's what I'll say. It's a function of the illumined mind. And this, to train the mind to intuit reality, let's say the development of pure reason, which is not reasoning. It's not like A leads to B leads to C. It's a flash of understanding as you view many things in relationship as they truly are. So we have to do these things, and we are in process of doing them. Imagination is found on the sixth sub-level of the astral plane. In other words, let's see, if I go here, I can probably get to that and show you. You're aware of it, I know. There it is. Right here, imagination is found on the second level or the sixth level of the astral plane. And then we have the interpretive faculty involving the higher levels of the lower mind, plus whatever we find here on the higher mental plane. And we have the true intuition or pure reason appearing here on the Buddhic plane. So basically, we have to link all of these together. From the planetary perspective, it's a bit like linking Neptune and Venus, Mercury, and Mercury again. The truly intuitive planets, at least from my understanding, are Neptune, Mercury, Jupiter, and one other. Yes, Uranus, giving us the flash of sudden understanding. Okay, so if we have to do these things, and we're in process of doing them as we align with the soul, with our higher power, with our angel of the presence, with our solar angel, with this great supervising deity. We're doing that. And as we build the Antakarana according to the method that the Tibetan has presented, then we are beginning to enter the world of the spiritual triad and can somewhat access the intuition, although that increases and increases as we go along. Now look, if you have thoughts, if you have questions, if you have statements, make a note of them as we go through these things. I'll stop and then I'll ask you for them, okay? But in order to move along, it's my style or my method to deal first with the material and then with questions and or comments about the material. So if we can do these things, and we are all aspirants. I mean, even the Christ is an aspirant to life on Sirius. Even the Buddha is an aspirant. But let's just say we are aspirants towards initiation, and we are certainly that until the third degree occurs in the normal language. If we can do these things, we, the aspirants, can provide a demonstrating laboratory for the trained observers of the world. Well, in other words, observers of the world. We are the trained observers. We can become the trained observers because we see with clarity, and we don't allow our biases, our desires, our misinterpretations to veil the reality which is. We get rid of all those things by practicing Raja Yoga, and we purify and we subdue the restless psychic and lower mental nature. So obviously this is coming up, it's not really here yet, but in places all over the world it is being practiced, and that is very important. The practice is going on, and we wonder how long it will take before we move beyond practice into real work supervised by a master. But I'll say I don't think it will be before 2025 when the plans will be laid for, in all probability, he says, for the first stages of the real externalization. Now, one of the things which the developed intuition can do is to break the glamour and illusion which invade the life. Wow, those are powerful words. And notice that the word break here, what a first-rate factor. And I want to say that Vulcan, a planet of great light, actually, so bright in a way, it's so close to the sun you can't even really see it yet, will help break, smash. He uses various words. Let's see, SMASH. He uses another word too. We'll come to it. Very first-rate words. And these are aggressive forces. These are forces which the Black Lodge, which the forces of opposition are utilizing to disrupt our perception of the truth. So we are being deceived, or we are self-deceived, and all kinds of untruths are floating around in our psyche and our lower mind. So intuition is a weapon, and we have to understand that. When we develop that horn of the unicorn, that ajna center horn, or maybe it's even located a little bit higher than that, we have an intuitive weapon extending imaginatively out onto the astral plane and destroying the veils, the miasmas, the glamours, the things that prevent us from seeing the truth. Now, obviously, that's the symbol with its spiral of the true initiate, who has, in a way, opened at least the beginning of the third eye. And it is something that, we're all trying to cultivate the best we can. It is a weapon, and it is an instrument of revelation. One of the things that a group of aspirants whose intuitional interplay is established. Now, when you see a word like interplay, right away you think of a planet, and you know what it is. It's Mercury. It is the planet of back and forth, carrying light and knowledge between the poles. It always has to have two positions. It always is the medium of transmission between 2 points, usually a positive and negative. So we need that intuitional interplay between us and the higher planes. So once this is established, a group of aspirants has this, what they can accomplish is to aid the work of smashing world glamour. Wow. So sometimes when we're working there together on the astral plane with our sort of imagined unicorn horn, working as our instrument of destruction, the word like smash, it's such a Vulcanian word, it's a hammer word, it can be understood as effective. Such work can be done when you have awakened the intuition. Now, we're not going to do that without building the Antakarana, and it's going to be intuition at will, not just intuition now and then when there's a sufficient alignment between the astral body and the intuitional level and uncontrolled. No, intuition at will, the science of intuition. And when you're, we who are in these groups, when you're interrelated understanding, that's a pure reason kind of word, is firm and true. Your interrelated understanding. I seem to be smelling smoke. I hope not. I'm at my son's house, and it'd be very dramatic to be giving this kind of webinar while the house is burning up, but I'd prefer that did not take place. Okay. So anyway, when your interrelated understanding is firm and true. Now, so far we have a lot of infirmity and a lot of variation and vacillation regarding the truth. So we have a lot of training to do together, individually, and together. The hierarchy will be able to use the world aspirants, and will let us number ourselves among them, because until we are an initiate of the third degree, we're pretty much, going to count ourselves as an aspiring disciple. The hierarchy will be able to use the world aspirants as an instrument for breaking of group glamour wherever it may be found. Well, my goodness, you just have to look at the political, social situation and the rising up of the of the far right, which brought us fascism and Nazism, and you see what a profound glamour may again be descending on those who are vulnerable to that method of thought, usually souls with less experience or with some blind spot in their makeup. So it's a test for those who have established the true values to resist the invasion. It's an invasion of these lower forms of thought which want to imprison humanity once again. It is happening, and some of those who were not satisfied with how it all went in World War II are back trying it again, and they are sensitive to the members of the Black Lodge and the forces of obstruction, and are trying to reestablish non-democracy and try to enslave the consciousness of humanity once again. Maybe this is going to be the toughest of the attacks so far. We don't know. Okay, anyway, I refer to this possibility in order to, here's his word again, incite you all to more rapid and steady growth and effort. DK is a master in the use of effective words. If he wants to incite us, he wants to put a fire under us, encourage us to move more quickly and more steadily and grow along the lines of intuition so that together we can really break up these veils which are keeping humanity from understanding the truth, however much they think they understand the truth. I had an experience recently, I won't get into too many details, but a young person said to me, look, I can't do for you what I've been doing because it's against my religion. You know, basically, you're putting out theosophy and that's the devil's work. Okay, you know, what can you say? This is what they believe. But the time must come for the clarification of consciousness and the fading out of these sixth ray misapprehensions, which are so narrow that they don't see the larger picture and the greater possibilities. Okay, so we need to break it up wherever it can be found. You have been told that one of the needs lying before all aspirants is to arrive at that intuitional knowledge, straight knowledge in the words of Master Moria, and that intelligent understanding of glamour, both individual and planetary, which will enable them most definitely to work at its dispelling. Now, you do understand and you see how it is a combination of the fourth ray and the fifth ray, which are needed, and that's that wonderful kind of union between Mercury, fourth ray, and Venus, fifth ray. Those are two planets very occult and working excellently in relation to each other and working in relation to the Ajna center and the throat center. Now, usually Venus rules the Ajna center, but at an advanced stage, Mercury takes over. And Mercury has a lot to do with speech and with thought at the throat center, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus, which rules the throat center. So you can see how this ajna and throat interrelation, which accounts for so much of the intelligence of humanity, has to be brought to bear on the problem. So intuitional knowledge and intelligent understanding, that's what we are striving for at this time. Okay, now, and that's basically what this book is all about, to try to give us at least the intelligent understanding which will promote the descent of intuitional knowledge. And we need it on the individual level and the planetary level, and we're working at then the dispelling of the glamour. Now notice how he's switching these words around. The word dispelling is usually reserved for illusion, but it is also a word connected to the intuition because intuition dispels, okay? So it's usually the dispelling intuition in relation to illusion and the dissipating intelligence in relation to glamour. And there's another word in relation to Maya. Yes, devitalization, ending the chaos of Maya. So those are the words, dispelling, dissipation, and devitalization. That understanding that we can come to, such as we are, will necessarily only be relative. But in the course of the next few years, what does he mean by that? Your knowledge of the subject and of the methods whereby glamour can be dissipated can be materially increased. Now, he began some of this around the year 1931. Maybe by 32, 33, he was working with a glamour group. So he was anticipating that this could happen. And remember that these seed group efforts occurred before it was a certainty that the second phase of the Great War would occur. At this time, the hierarchy itself did not know necessarily whether humanity would precipitate World War II, which can be considered as the second and major phase of the Great War, beginning in 1914. DK began to look at the whole thing as one thing. From 1914 to 1945, there was a Great War. It went inward for a while, but it seethed and was, full of tumult during those years after World War I ended, and then it reprecipitated. They didn't know it would be so. In the great 1936 expression of love and goodwill, according to the cycles that were operative, there was the chance still of averting the precipitation of the second phase, World War II. So there was a plan in a few years for these seed groups to really, really develop. And look, if you read carefully in Initiation Human and Solar, you can see that there was a plan for the hierarchy to externalize and the Christ himself to appear before the turning into the 21st century, which is amazing, but as I said, many things intervened and atomic energy came along and the possibility of humanity destroying itself entirely came along and the plans had to be changed. So anyway, he's telling everybody here, you can learn a lot in a short time. This must happen if you work at the problem consciously in your own lives, okay? Consciously in your own lives, and attempt to grasp the underlying theory also. So we're practical, and we're working at seeing what are our glamours, what are our group glamours, what's really happening here, and what is the theory behind the whole process of glamour, and he's going to go into that in the book, step by step. Okay, so make notes if you want to discuss something, because I'm going through here to a certain point. It is my hope, and I have to plow ahead. It's an Aries thing to do, but forgive me for that. I just have to plow ahead here. Very little has been written or taught hitherto anent the subject of glamour, and it may mean much of value if we undertake the consideration of this subject, of its causes, of its effects, and also deal with the technique or techniques whereby it can be dissipated and dispelled. He's crossing lines here, Sometimes illusion means everything that's wrong. Sometimes glamour means everything that's wrong. Sometimes Maya means everything that's wrong. And there's also a way of targeting these words to specific levels: illusion to the mind, glamour to the emotions, and Maya to the etheric and physical nature. It is obvious, he says, that I cannot deal with the subject adequately in one instruction. Goodness, I think we agree with that, don't we? And we will take the next 2 or 3 years, and I wonder, will we as a group do that? Therefore, to discuss and study this important matter growing out of the need of the present time and the increased sensitivity to subtle impression. Now, increased sensitivity of humanity to subtle impression. Remember, this is not necessarily coming from the soul. The subtle bodies are not the soul body. So, the mind, the emotions, these are subtle bodies, and they can be filled with glamour and illusion. And just because they're subtle, it doesn't mean they are spiritual. So we have to have this in mind. Okay, where are we here? The increased sensitivity. So basically, people are getting very sensitive, but they're becoming sensitive to a lot of glamours and illusions, which are driving their behavior in a chaotic manner. And so you look around and you say, whoa, how is this all going to end? And people like ourselves, who maybe have a little bit more clarity on the matter, have to work esoterically as much as we possibly can to help dissipate, dispel, be rid of, banish, expel, all that. We have to do that. So DK is saying, look, it hasn't been possible for me to do this. He's telling the group of 9, whatever they are, up till now, as the group was incomplete. There had to be 9 people in this particular type of group. And he waited for people to come into the arcane school, people he knew from the past, recognized, and so forth, and then at a certain point invited them in via Alice Bailey. It has not been possible for me to do this up till now, as the group was incomplete and the inner cohesion needed strengthening. That's something we had better take to heart. Of the 7 systemic laws, the law of cohesion pertains to the second ray. And obviously he's the second ray master here, and he's trying to really bring the group together in love and understanding. And that those factors themselves will go a long way to dissipating group glamour. Now I can do so, he says, as the group members are functioning together with a much increased inner relationship. And remember that some of these people never met each other. They were, in those days, there was no internet, whatever. There were letters. They were scattered all over the country and maybe all over the world. But something about their inner cohesion and their meditative work with each other and so forth had reached a point when he could begin advancing the work. So the group members are functioning together with a much increased inner relationship. And this is very important. A spirit of love has been shed abroad among you through the group reaction to each other's need in the recent period of glamour. Well, that I'm not sure, is he referring, this group did undergo a real difficulty. Some people associated with it fell in to the trap of the thought form of Master DK, who spoke good words of mediocre cheer, that thought form did, as he describes it, and really racked up the etheric and astral body of some of the members. So maybe, there was some kind of distress in the group. They answered it with the spirit of love. This is one of my hypotheses regarding what he says here. Okay, and note here, you might just read this book and overlook the fact that he's actually talking to a group. He's not just talking to the general public, he's talking to a group of people dedicated to a certain task. So this is group talk, and we might overlook that if we were not aware of the groups of 9. Okay, it is my intention, therefore, to change your work somewhat. Now, apparently the symbolic work didn't really succeed the way he had hoped. Retaining the symbolic phrases as an exercise for your intuitional insight, but dropping the consideration of the more formal and visual symbols. Now, we can still study symbols, but as I told you, certain symbols of a rather complex nature kind of came down, and they would have required a great deal of insight to penetrate. And he says why it failed. And when he tells us why the interpretation of symbols failed, we can understand a trap that we might fall into. You have not gained from these symbolic forms what had been hoped. Here we go. For the concrete mind of the majority of the group members simply increased the form aspect. So we had been reading about the 5 stages of interpretation, and the very first one was to sort of deal with the form of the symbol as it was, and they got fixated on the externalities and did not carry it sufficiently inward. We need not just the lower part of Mercury for the concrete mind. We need what I'm calling here the interpretive, antichironic Mercurian mind. And it wasn't sufficiently developed to link whatever formal symbol there was to the concept and to the higher meaning and to its esoteric significance. Those things were missing. Now, in the group, which is the ceremonial group at conference, which Tuija leads, we are going more deeply into the interpretation of symbols. If you come to conference, pre-conference especially, you may be able to experience that and are trying to really link the outer form to the deep inner meaning. This is what we all have to try to do. And as we build the Antikarana more and more, and even as we simply contact the soul as the first stage, this ability to sort of put in check the concrete mind will develop. Now, one of the reasons is so interesting for the new esoteric schools. The Tibetans said they have to be developed because the concrete mind of man is too overdeveloped. So the new esoteric schools will solve some of that, and the emotions are unstable and the body is weak, and it gives us kind of a picture of why these esoteric schools have to come in and have to correct these undesirable conditions. So anyway, the group simply was too concrete and increased the form aspect and never got to the real point of the symbol. So let's take these as warnings about what might happen when we interpret symbols and we attempt spiritual reading. Okay, so and then there were others who said, look, these others didn't really need this line of development. So it was discontinued. We shall change the focus of our attention to a deep study of glamour. Okay, so that's when it happened. The work on symbolic interpretation gave way to a deep study of glamour. Herein will lie your service. For as you think truly and use your illumined mind, illumined intelligence, and you know, sort of interesting here, it's the soul illumined mind, isn't it? And a lot of these people were approaching the second degree, not necessarily in that life, but in one or two lives to come. And it's spiritual intelligence and the illumination of the mind, which have to be in place at the second degree. Spiritual intelligence and the illumination of the mind is very much, again, a Mercury-Venus kind of factor which has to be in place. So if you can achieve this, here's your service. If you can have a very deep study of glamour, which we're hoping to do here, you can help in time to do two things. Okay, so this is one of the aspects of service that a group such as ours can accomplish. We can perhaps clarify the group mind on this subject. I refer not here to your particular group or our particular group, but to the world consciousness. So this is involved. Group number 2 is called the Clarification of Consciousness group, and we can help people in the world understand how they are being misled by certain emotionally charged thought forms which are not true and which serve strictly biased personality interests and desires. Of course, they will fight you, you know. Nobody likes to be disillusioned. We even have in our language, they say, oh, I was so disillusioned, they shake their head, you know. But disillusionment is a good thing. Deglamorization is a good thing. Maybe when the magazine Glamour disappears, it'll be a sign. Okay, and then the next one, what we can help to accomplish, help shatter. That's the other word. Help shatter the great illusion which has held and still holds the sons of men in thrall. Notice the first ray words, and we had another word up there, and I know I'm forgetting one or other of them, but the word was break. You know, there's many, many words. Dissipate, scatter, throw away, eject, all that kind of thing. It's a first ray approach. A lot of first rays involved here, and a group such as ours or any effective group doing what he says to do can help shatter, smash, break the world illusion, which includes, of course, at first, glamour. Now, Vulcan isn't even discovered yet. Okay, so let's say Vulcan is not yet discovered, but it is the smashing, as how do you spell smash? SM, smashing planet. And Vulcan is the hammer, And I don't know how long it will be before Vulcan is discovered. It could be decades, could be sooner, it could be even later. But when it is discovered and humanity deals with its nature, the ability through the spiritual will to smash these lying, deceptive forms will grow considerably. So help shatter and smash and break and to clarify what's going on here. And right now, look, humanity is just swept by glamour, and it's increasing because the forces of obstruction, the dark lodge, the impedimenta, the ones who want to stop the new age, they are putting their energy into taking over the vulnerable psyches of those who have not yet reached the point of discrimination. The fourth subplane of the mental plane, discrimination, they haven't reached that yet. They don't know what's true, what's not true, and they just get swept away. And that's all that stuff right now about fake news, and alternative facts. And it's a blatant attempt to impose the lie, the untruth upon human consciousness. It doesn't make any difference what's true. Just make up your own facts as you go along. It's crazy and it's terrible, and we who know a little more about it have to stand in the light of the soul and higher lights and work from within to counteract this. So he says, and I'm not going to get to do all that I wanted to do. It's always the case. I talk too much, So yes, no, I'm not going to get to do everything I want to do. All right. So I'm going to have to move this to another place. But I will read just a little bit more, and then next time we can go on with this. All I have to do is find out where we were. Yes, I ask, therefore, for your service along these lines. Sometimes DK even used the word, I beg you. This is a master talking. I beg you to cooperate with me. I beg you to do this or that, seeing the implications of what will happen if the sensitive disciples and aspirants do not respond correctly. The whole thing could go down the drain, So strong words are used. I ask you, therefore, for your service along these lines, and I request also that you give increased attention at the time of your full moon contact with myself. Now he said, okay, look, 12 hours beforehand, I'm there for you, and especially in the group approach. And as you approach me and approach my ashram, I will respond. Now, we're assuming that for those of us who are sincere and working in group formation, the Tibetan still has his eye open and his eye out for that kind of approach. This was a very special kind of approach for groups of 9 who were working with him on the periphery of his ashram. But we're trying to do something similar, and I don't think it hurts for us to think that he will be aware of our group approach at the time of the full moon. So give more attention to contacting the Tibetan at the time of the full moon. And I'm just saying this is for all of us, okay? This group should have a special aptitude for work along the line of dispelling glamour at the period of the full moon. Now, I wonder how many of us have that in mind, that at the period of the full moon, we can be more effective in the dispelling of glamour. That doesn't necessarily mean at the moment of the full moon. The general period of the full moon can be a time of real effectiveness in the dispelling of glamour. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, because those 5 days, those 3 days, those 7 days, whatever rhythm we may be observing, we ought to be able to see more clearly and dispel and dissipate accordingly. Contact is made on the different planes according to the focus of the subtle bodies of the personnel of the group. So, the subplane focus, each one of them has something different. Some groups are very sharp, very clear. Other groups are just starting that. So there will be a different focus. And this group, he's saying, this particular group, the glamour group, okay, makes its contact with me, himself, on the higher levels of the astral plane. Now, what's found on that astral plane? The higher levels, I'm just saying, it's imagination and it's emotional idealism. Maybe some aspect of clairvoyance will also be present, but the ones we are supposed to work with are imagination and emotional idealism. Okay, so this group was to meet him on the higher levels of the astral plane, and maybe we can think about that with respect to ourselves as well. Hence, the clarity of their reactions and the wealth of their detailed records. So basically, the members of this group were saying, what am I contacting? What can I write down that describes what I'm contacting? And they did a good job of that if they didn't become too concrete. So they were very clear, using, I presume, the fifth ray to a certain extent. They were probably also interpreting the complex symbols using that kind of fifth ray, but it probably got out of hand and became too concrete. Also, herein will lie eventually their service. He's talking to the group and to groups like that group, for they can later, but not for some long time yet, use the days of contact and the moment of entrance, as it is sometimes called, at the moment of the full moon, for definite work in dispelling some of the world illusion. Now, does he specifically mean world illusion, all that mental misinterpretation that goes on, which is so related to glamour? Basically, if you want to get a good glamour, take your illusions and add emotion to them. Try to carry out your illusions and you will have a nice, juicy glamour. But first must come, however, and this is very important for all of us, first must come the aptitude in dispelling illusion, glamour, in the personal life of each one of you. So, go to the book, turn to page 120 or so, 121, 122, right in there, and you'll see, according to your ray, what are the likely glamours. He says, of course, the name of glamours are legion. There are so many. And he's very specific in how he describes a student's glamour. Now, we don't have him here to do that, but given the lists of the glamours found in those pages of Glamour, A World Problem, and given his method of describing subtle glamours in discipleship in the New Age, and given our own kind of thought and intuition about this, we may detect the glamours in our life which have to be dispelled. And of course, always ask someone close to you because they may see it more than you see it. Now, in terms of making contact, there's another group that he was shepherding. It makes its contact with me on the mental levels, and therein will lie their field of service. And I do believe that is the telepathic communicators. See, if you look at this, spiritual telepathy is found on a very high level of the upper mental plane. And very interestingly, the spiritual telepaths were made up of those group members who were closest to Alice Bailey and were there at the founding of the whole enterprise. So you have people like Foster Bailey and Regina Keller and Roberto Saggioli and Alice Bailey herself and some others who were right in there on the telepathic level, and they were sort of at the top feeding all the other groups. Still other groups, and he was trying to organize 10 of them, still other groups are only as yet in an embryonic stage. Their personnel is incomplete, and the group integration is only in the process of being set up. So they may have had, 3, 4, 5 members, not 9 members, and they had a lot more integrating work to do. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this subject, And then I'm going to, well, do I even? Yes, I'm going to finish this subject, and we'll leave it at the three great events which are imminent in the world consciousness today. Okay, so I will therefore ask you to intensify your effort each month at the full moon period. Now, let's pretend he's talking to us, okay? And seek to strengthen your tie with myself and with your fellow group members. Strengthen the tie, the love, the soul relation, the infused soul relation. Use the triangles. Strengthen the connections. One word of warning, and occultism is not easy. One word of warning I will give you. Success along this line will bring both its rewards and also its difficulties. It's always a two-edged sword here. You will have to watch with care for the undue stimulation of your astral or emotional nature. I'm going to just kind of, I'm going to say that's a big one. Because if we find ourselves getting kind of overly emotional in relation to our discipleship, all is not well. The solar plexus is being stimulated rather than the heart. So you will have to watch with care for the undue stimulation of your astral emotional nature with consequent and subsequent glamour. Because obviously when the emotions start getting very strong, glamour, that great veil upon reality covering the intuition, it will appear. You have to exercise the deepest watchfulness. Notice, deepest watchfulness. Who's he training? He is training the observers of reality, okay? Watchfulness. In the endeavor to work thus upon the astral plane, holding simultaneously the attitude of the observer on the high plane of the soul. So soul identification is needed. The ultimate observer, of course, is the monad, but the soul is the monad in a way, and our first point of real detached observation, truly detached, is taking place within the soul. Of course, mental polarization helps as well along the way. No constructive work and no service of vital importance can be rendered in this difficult sphere of activity unless there is a detached and liberated attitude. So the very first issue of detachment, which is an attitude of the soul to the personality, is necessary. So let's say detachment is an attitude of the soul to the personality. You are to work in one of the most difficult spheres of activity. And he's talking to us now. Perhaps the most difficult to which a disciple can be called, and hence the advisability of working there in group formation, which is what we're trying to do. Now, of course, in terms of handling your own individual glamours, supported by the presence of the group, we have to do that on our own. But when we're attacking these major world glamours, we have to work together. I cannot emphasize too strongly that you are to work as a group and not as individuals, at least when dealing with the larger glamours that are affecting all of humanity. Okay, well, friends, I guess I got done with my usual wonderful estimation about half what I intended. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to cross this out, and hopefully next time we get together, we'll work here. Okay, and I'm not sure exactly. This is page 18. Okay, and here we'll start again on page 18 when we continue. All right. Well, the Tibetan is such a deep teacher, and he's demanding from us everything we have of the lighted mind, the loving astral body, and the well-coordinated etheric physical nature. Some of you with the seventh ray on that level maybe have an easier time than the third ray types, but it's required of all. We have to overcome this veil of impulsion on the etheric plane, which is chaotic, and then on the etheric level pertaining to the astral plane is the veil of distortion, and then on the mental level, it's the veil of separation. All these things have to be overcome. Right now, I know I've talked. Yes?
Point of clarification, you have there for the beginning of Doggy 70, the 23rd of March. Are we not on a weekly schedule with this? So it would be
thank you for that. I began to think of it in terms of, the signs of triangles. Sorry. So when is it?
Yeah. It's next Friday.
So the 16th? 16th. I can still.
And it's the AM schedule.
Okay.
And just a note for those in the United States and Canada, I believe we go to daylight savings time. So for them, it would be an hour later.
Okay.
Just to
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, good. All right, friends. So that's our discussion here. And now what I'd like to do, every presenter has different methods of working in webinars. Some take a paragraph and then discuss it, and another paragraph and then discuss it. And when I'm working with the faculty of the Moria Federation, that's what I do. But when working with in a more formal way on these books, I prefer to go through a body of material, followed then by questions and discussions. So I ask you now if you have thoughts, and I ask BL and Joe to help me in case I overlook somebody who may have wanted to speak but did not speak. Okay, Vera, I see your hand, and you can go.
Yeah, I'm seeking some clarification, and I recall that probably I heard in your webinar about triangles that at this stage, the humanity, it's in respect to astrology, signs, and ruling planets, that at this time, we as a humanity are influenced more by the ruling planets than the actual energies of the signs.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if
that is an interesting question. In general, it's true that the planets are a lower level of influence, but when you begin to see that certain planets actually rule the onset of mastership or the onset of the fourth degree, you realize that the planets too have quite a scope. Now, if you were to turn to, and we will, I'm working on the commentary on a treatise on white magic, there's a section there where it talks about the signs of the zodiac working below the diaphragm. Very interesting. And then it talks about the rays working above the diaphragm. We have to understand that in the context in which it is presented. I will simply say that a higher order of influence is coming from the lords of the constellations, but it does make its way down into normal human living and is appropriated in a limited way according to the development of the form which is appropriating it. So we have to be inclusive here. We have to say the planets in their three categories of orthodox, esoteric, and hierarchical will work for all human beings. The signs will, the signs are concentrations of influence from the constellations themselves. The real energy is with the constellations, and the Davic concentration is the sign. These signs will be effective, influencing the lives of different kinds of people who have lifted themselves to various levels of attainment. But let's just say that the higher aspects of the signs will not be operative in the life of many people who have not reversed the wheel. As far as the three great constellations go, the Great Bear, the Pleiades, and Sirius, or Little Bear, as it might be, they do make their way down. And let's say everything comes from the Great Bear in terms of the rays, in terms of our local system. And so everybody is influenced by that. But the higher nature of the rays cannot touch the people who have not reversed the wheel. So the higher you are on the initiatory ladder, the more the full nature of the three great constellations can come through. And at one point, DK says, well, Sirius, there's all kinds of stories where Sirius is prominent and someone gets bit by a dog, it's a very low expression, but that the true nature of Sirius is not really going to come through until the third initiation. So, in terms of the general initiatory development of the first and second degree, yes, Sirius is influential because it gives our entire initiatory scheme its impulse. But the true nature of Sirius comes through because of its cosmic mental plane connection. It comes through at the time of the third degree. That's when it begins. So we cannot overgeneralize about it. The planets tend to influence most, and the houses too. The lower type of individual who has not reversed the wheel. The signs come next, but they do have a low application, and a much higher one which people cannot reach, even a monadic one. And the three great constellations, of course, have a very monadic influence, but we experience an attenuation of their energies on the normal level, and increasingly more and more of their real higher energies as we advance. I think that's the best I can do to answer that question. Use them all, but be careful how you use them, and stratify the levels of interpretation. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, Vera. Okay. Other thoughts and questions? Okay, we seem to have a question here from Suzanne. Okay. Here you had Natnia. You've gotten that straightened out, I assume. What type? Okay, great. What type of memories are we to try to work with? Would the practice of the evening review be of? Indeed. The practice of the evening review as you reflect upon the situation visually, auditorily, or maybe in terms of another sense. You gather that into your central focus in the middle of the head or between the pituitary and the pineal gland. And for instance, I'm looking at two pictures right now on the wall of my son's house. If I close my eyes, there they are. See, I've photographed them in a way. And in a way, we are photographing everything we see, everything we hear. So just try to recollect those photographs which have occurred during the day and sustain them. And that will feed first the power of memory, and then once you begin manipulating the elements of memory by moving them around and changing their shape and their size and all the rest of it, you'll come into creative visualization. So the evening review can be very helpful. And, I would never say what type of memory should you work with, but I just say avoid the things that have a huge emotional charge at first, and certainly negative memories and traumatic memory. You don't need that. You're just dealing with the normal types of visualization at first. Later, if you want to investigate those things which have been very meaningful to you in a positive or negative way, you can do that, but try to keep the emotion out of it at first. That's what I would suggest. I mean, I don't know if I just say, what memory do I have right now? Well, I have a memory of me at 5 years old, and I'm smelling flowers as I go along a row of flowers at my grandmother's farm. I can see it. I can see my own image. I can see the kind of flowers, whatever they were. I mean, you can work with whatever you want, whatever seems vivid to you, but try to sustain it. And then try to, say, what do I desire truly? In other words, send me an image, from above. Send me an image. What truly am I working on? And maybe an image will begin to coalesce, and try to be really clear about it. Try to hold the different parts of it in relation to each other so they're not flying all over the place. This is part of the control of the versatile psychic nature. Now, you have a poetic streak in you, and you've worked with word and image and all of that, it should not be difficult for you to do this. Maybe for some and first and seventh grade types it's more difficult, but okay. We just cultivate your inner imagination and be the controller of your imagination. There's an ability in psychology called active imagination. You let the imagination go wherever it is. It's very diagnostic. The psychologist can tell when you report what you're seeing, where you're at in your psyche. But I wouldn't recommend that. We want the mind to control the imagination when we're dealing with the creative imagination. Okay, Suzanne? Okay. Well, okay, right. And here's another question. So now, from Jan, how does one develop emotional idealism? Well, here's the way I do it. I look at something that is highly desirable in my own view. I get an image of something that is highly desirable, and maybe it'll be some unitive picture, something expressing love, unity, something of that nature, something expressing the illumination of people's minds. And then when I get it really, really clear, the emotions come along with it to support it. In other words, I look at the image and I'm swept with positive emotion. And that positive emotion makes me really want to develop the very thing I see. See, in the white magical process, you can see something. You have a thought, but if it doesn't have emotional, aspirational sustainment, you're not going to want to bring it down and see it happen. So I look at beautiful things internally in my mind, and sometimes horrible things, whatever, but beautiful things, and then I am swept with the appropriate love, aspiration, and desire, the positivity. I am moved, by what I see, and I know then that I've reached the stage of emotional idealism, and I'm now able to bring that image down, precipitate it, and make it more and more real. At least, all I can say is that's what I do. Anything further, Jan? Okay. Right. Okay.
And Carl has his hand up.
Okay, thank you, BL. And here we go, Carl. Right, okay, go ahead, Carl.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
I love that. It's only taken me a year.
Oh. So far, so good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyhow, thought that came to me when we were reading this section of DK in the Glamour book was that it seemed the thought that came was how we lie to ourselves and how we believe our lies, how our distorted thoughts, which are related, to being infected by our emotions, our desires, and particularly with the idea when we think about ourselves as our body and not our soul. That these create some of the problems that we face as students of the wisdom.
We have to learn to disidentify with the vehicles. Now, Roberto Assagioli took the old method of Raja Yoga. He says it's very, very old, but he says you should practice it every day. And he was talking to his students and his clients. I have a body, but I'm not a body. I have emotions, but I'm not, and so forth, until we began to identify what we actually are and detach ourselves from our instruments, because we are the observer and the mover of our instruments, but we are not them, except, of course, we're everything, but that's something else. We're, at least at our stage of development, we have to separate ourselves through detachment from those instruments. And, it's so easy to get caught up in these lower worlds with which we have identified for millions of years. Millions of years. Think of it. And now here we are at the end of the mutable cross, going on to the fixed cross, and we have a whole new job to do. It's no longer the common cross. It's no longer the personality cross. We are entering the cross of the Christ, the fixed cross, the cross of discipleship, the cross on which the soul is revealed, and requires an entirely different attitude. What else, Carl?
And
Yeah,
just that when we achieve those things, then we are able to see clearly and interpret things clearly,
exactly.
as interpret reality as it really is.
Yeah, we get
And
closer.
Yeah.
Closer and closer to it. You know, I mean, talk about being humbled, you know. Here's what DK says. He says, you do not get rid of illusion until the 9th initiation. So obviously the illusions that we're working with are always, so then he says, does this mean that the masters are subject to illusion? And he says, yes, very high illusions, which for us are like truth. See, basically, what I think he's saying is that the whole cosmic physical plane is a plane of illusion from a cosmic perspective. And that after that 9th degree, we can be ready to take our journey onto the cosmic astral plane, where true love is found, but also the home of the cosmic evil. So, you know, the struggle continues. Struggle continues.
And that brings up a good point, is that that you mentioned, is as the higher we go, the more subtle the glamours become.
Exactly. So, and therefore the discernment, the discrimination, you know, to detect what are these things. See, there's good and bad, but there's also better, and there's also still better, and then best, and then you find out that your best is just a better, you know. So and on we go, removing the veils, until once again we discover who and what we really are, that we are the universal logos of this entire universe. It's going to take a long time in terms of time to rediscover that we've always been that, but we've descended as monads into very deep levels of limitation. So but fortunately, we're in the phase now where we're starting to lift the veils. A lot of people, you know, let's just say, a lot of people have not reversed the wheel, or are not even thinking of reversing the wheel. They're just not doing it. So they want what the personality wants. They just want that. And the veils may be made even thicker when you're doing that kind of thing. You look around in politics and the social scene and in so many of the fields, people are just thickening the glamour and thickening the illusion, you know. But hopefully we have the perspective, because we see more clearly, hopefully, to thin it out. Hopefully, that's the case. Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, and BB, just go ahead. Let's see, BB, you're self-muted, so if you want to speak, you have to. There you go. Okay. Go ahead, BB.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. It came to my mind how important the mystical experiences can be, since you can, when you have the vision of how the world could be as souls, living as souls, right? And then when you start to work on glamours, you never lose faith, right?
Yes.
Because glamours, and it can be horrible to see what is going on and how reality is in some circumstances.
Yes.
But when you have this vision about how beautiful life will be, if it will be beautiful,
Yes.
sooner or later, then you can maintain faith.
Well, you know, you're speaking in a very interesting language. I want to point this out here, if I can do that, from some of the maps. If I can go over here. Ah, there it is. Okay. You see, this particular map shows the importance of the planet Neptune, which is the ideal vision. It's the ruler of the astral, Buddhic, monadic, and even the cosmic astral plane. And it brings this intense beauty and idealism. It's even the higher octave of the planet of beauty, Venus. So Neptune is higher than Venus, and they're both along the same line. And in our particular solar system, which is a second ray solar system, this Neptune quality is what lifts the mystic up to the mystical vision and eventually to what we call the divine vision, which is like an anchor in the higher worlds of beauty, such as the Buddhic plane, let us say. And then no matter what else happens, we always have that yearning, that aspiration to establish ourselves in that world. And also, if we're members of the hierarchy, to bring that beautiful vision right down into the worlds of the personality. So the mystical phase is extremely important, and it is not to be dispensed with. It's simply the Uranus phase, the occult phase, has to be added to it, so that in fact the members of the hierarchy are a combination of these two great synthesizing planets, Neptune the mystic and Uranus the occultist. And we have to have the balance in our nature of those two factors. It's the same way with ruling planets. Suppose you're an Aries type. You have a lot of Mars in the beginning, but later, as things get more spiritual, Mercury is there. It doesn't completely replace Mars. It is just added to Mars. And then eventually Uranus is added to Mercury. So it's an adding on and a retention of a higher quality of an earlier energy. So the mystical phase is extremely important, and especially in cultivating emotional idealism, because after all, DK was meeting these people on that level, on the higher level of the astral plane. Anything else, Bibi?
No, thank you for this clarification. This is very interesting.
Yes. Neptune, look, check out where Neptune is in your chart, All of us have to. In my own chart, I have a really strong Neptune, so I'm always idealizing these things and been on the sixth ray like forever. But, where Neptune is, it will lead you from the astral plane to the Buddhic plane, eventually to the monadic plane. And when we're very high initiates, Neptune will help us cross over into the cosmic astral plane. So it's a great planet, and it's, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's see, friends. What else have we? Okay, we had Suzanne, we had Natnia. Okay, and Natnia, I think it was earlier a technical matter. Was that the correct? Okay. Sometimes I'm just trying to. Oh, here it is. I erased it because I lowered my question box so far down that I forgot it was there. Okay. Anything else, folks, before we get into our meditation? Anybody else want to offer a thought or ask a question? I'm glad to see so many of you here. It's a good group. We have a lot of work to do on the inner planes. And, we can say, well, we're only working on the inner planes, but, that's where the causes are, on the inner planes. So we can work with much greater power if we get ourselves really together on the inner planes. And it doesn't mean that we don't, in the outer world, do all kinds of constructive things, but we run the danger, if we're not inwardly coherent, of doing a whole lot of running around on the outer level, which is not effective. So we have to be inwardly coherent in order to make our outer activities really count. Let's see now. Just want to say before the meditation, I think are we on the morning schedule? Okay, just a second, Rose, I'll be right there. We're on the evening schedule. That's where we are. And tomorrow, Tuija will lead the Soul of Nations meditation. And then on Sunday, well, it's a broadcast. And on Sunday, another broadcast in the Ask program, attracting money for hierarchical purposes. It's the main problem, says the Tibetan. It's the great stumbling block at this present time. But of course, people give money for what they desire. So the whole orientation of the astral body has to be changed, and it has to be fed by the soul illumined mind. That's important. Okay, and let's see, Rose, you're self-muted. There you go. Okay, go ahead.
I can't find the exact quote, but I was just reading a couple days ago in one of the Dyna books where he's speaking, where he says, should I dare point out your glamour for fear it will strengthen it? And it seems like a paradox, because in other places, of course, he says by naming the glamour is dispelling it. So I just wanted your thoughts on this one instance where he was afraid to point it out, in that it may somehow strengthen it.
I think it might be an individual matter. This person might not have had sufficient detachment in the area of the observer to handle that type of information. It might have just plunged them more into reactivity if they didn't have the place from which to stand and observe. I think it's a very individual matter. It depends on the rays also. Now, you know, the 6 ray types are very, very prone to glamour. And if you throw something into the pot along that line, there might be a lot of reactivity and insufficient distance from the personality. That would be my guess. And I don't think it's a general statement. I think that people need to know what they're doing wrong, what their tendencies are. They need to see those things, but they also need to establish the point of view which is sufficiently detached. Now look, what are the D's that are involved here? Detachment is the attitude of the soul to the personality. Decentralization is what is needed for the personality itself. Discrimination for the mind, dispassion for the astral body, and discipline, of course, for the physical. Now, when those series of detaching actions are established, you can pretty well speak the truth to people without their succumbing to fear and, oh my God, and I'm no good, and inferiority complex and all the rest of it. They won't react. They'll stand back, and instead they will see and properly manipulate. So I think it's a very individual matter. That's my guess on it. Anything else, Rose?
No, thank you. That would make sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, friends, am I missing anybody? Because it's time, I think, to get into our little meditation, and we'll continue with this issue of falsification. You know what I mean? It's a problem, and it's rampant at this time because the personality is asserting itself, and the forces of obstruction are using the personality elementals in order to cover the truth. So we've all lied and we've all covered the truth, and we've had to work our way out of it. And the truth does hurt. It certainly hurts us if we are attached to our personality values and so forth. But gradually we realize as well that the truth will set us free, and that the so-called devil is the father of lies, and that we will be bound to the lower worlds if we keep on misrepresenting what is true. Okay, now, excuse me. So, let's get into our work here. Okay, Glamour World Problem, and yes, get rid of that, and here we go. I have so many versions of things that I sometimes have to use all kinds of capitals and stars and things to tell me where I really had better be. All right. So here we are, some almost 50 of us, and we just enter the silence with each other. In a big group like this, we're not going to name everybody. I welcomed people at first, but then many more joined. So here we are in the silence, working with each other in different parts of the globe, but really in one field of consciousness. And in the silence, we gather strength and the sense of unity and even of synthesis. And the group soul can act. When you're doing this in your smaller glamour groups and so forth, you can go through the full 10 minutes of silence, but one can already feel the coherence. Now, we're going to use the lighted cross, which involves the forehead, chest, and two eyes, the cross of divinity, as he calls it, and we will use this protective formula, and we need the protective formula to work in this, it's actually psychologically dangerous area. So we need that. And we say together, as a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Visualize the lighted cross. Think about those words. So it's as if each one of us has this lighted cross, and as if the group as a whole is protected by this lighted cross of divinity. Now we blend the lights. We lift up the light of matter onto the level of the mind. And blend it with the light of the reasoning mind. So two lights are as one on the plane of mind. And then we reach imaginatively into the realm of the soul. Some people, visualize it above the head, as if the jewel in the lotus and the egoic lotus, causal body, was situated with that center there. It is a material thing in a subtle way. And we're going to touch that soul light to feel it as substantial. And bring it down, imaginatively down from the higher mental plane onto the lower mental plane, and fuse it with the light of matter, which we're calling etheric physical at this time, and the light of the lower mind, and now the light of the higher mind, the light of soul. The three are as one. In the imagination, three lights are one. The vitality of matter, the clarity of the mental vehicle, and the revealer of relationship, soul light. Three are one. And we will say together, followed by the Om, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So we have the triple light, and we have expectations of this light, that there will be a clarification. The light of day is the scorpionic light, and it rules the intuitional plane. And the illumined mind will also help with that. We want to see things as they are, and we want to have straight knowledge. Then we come to the formula. And as we say the words of the formula together, establishing us as intermediaries between the world of truth and the world of glamour, we will visualize a great searchlight springing up from each one of us, from the brow, and that searchlight will cast its light upon the astral plane. The group will have its own searchlight, which is the combination of the searchlight of all of us, arising from the triple blended light. So, we affirm the following: radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. And remember that the world of the soul is called the world of meaning. So we are the intermediaries, and we're using the fourth ray here as a bridge between these worlds. We're bringing a lot of light. It's a lot of Taurus here. The new group of world servers, Taurus, the mother of illumination, bringing in the great fourth ray. Then we reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So we visualize that occurring. We are a bridge of light from the intuitive realms and soul realms into the world of glamour. Now, we want to strengthen our beam. Our beam is out there on the astral plane, out there, in there, however you want to think of it. The group beam of light is on the astral plane. But we saw that we have to shatter, smash, break, all those first-ray things in relation to glamour. So we're going to add the spiritual will to our beam. We're going to invoke the spiritual will, and let's say for our purposes, it comes from the monad spirit, through the atmic plane, through the jewel in the lotus, and through the different petals of the egoic lotus, which have a particular connection with will. So we imagine that alignment from the monad, jewel in the lotus, atmic plane, jewel in the lotus, all the way really down into the center of our head center. And we say together, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. With power upon its beam, light is focused upon the goal. And the goal is, in general, the dissipation of glamour, the clouds, miasmas, veils, distortions, everything that prevents us from seeing the truth. So this glamour that we're working with, the glamour of the lie, the falsehood, the falsification, the distortion, in order to fulfill the desires of the lower self, the lie arises, and to prevent the pain, the necessary pain, which truth may bring. So it's an evasion. The lie is an evasion, and we will not be set free. It is the truth that sets us free. So this is the glamour we're working with, so rampant in the world today. And we'll use this threefold word of power. And as we use it, we imagine our beam of light, our revelatory, weaponized beam of light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and its dissipation. Together, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of falsification, of lying. The power of our united light prevents the appearance, even the appearance, of this glamour of the falsehood. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. Quality cannot settle down upon humanity because this beam of light is preventing that quality from influencing humanity. At least that's the way we see it. And finally, the power of our united light destroys the life, the vitality behind this glamour. Now, working with these words of power over the next 5 minutes in silence, with intensity of purpose, we'll see this work proceeding. It is group work, we remember, and we are making our individual contribution to it. So the words of power will be up on the screen, and you can use them in your own individual way as you contribute to the overall effect of the group. 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose. with regard to these words of power and any affirmation which is of particular potency in your consciousness and which you deem to be particularly effective, always repeat it 3 times. Repeat the statement inwardly 3 times. And you will find the empowerment of the statement. This is advice from Master Moria. And the power of the mantra will be driven home through the repetition 3 times, stating the mantra. So the sun of truth is shining, the dark clouds imaginatively are disappearing. There's no vitality to sustain them, there's no influence from them, they cannot appear, and the sun of truth shines upon the astral plane, making it a field wherein the soul and buddhi can express. So we withdraw our beam back into the triple light. We turn our searchlight off imaginatively, and we sound the Om 3 times, 1 for each level, as all of these levels are interpenetrating and mutually effective, affirming in our consciousness that work has been done. These are ohms of clarification, allowing in the higher energies. Okay, friends, I've been saying it, come to the conference. Pre-conference starts on the 24th of April here in Chandler, Arizona. Then the regular conference starts a week later. Lots of learning, lots of activity, lots of opportunity to serve. Tomorrow, Souls of Nations broadcast. Sunday, Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes broadcast, and you can use your comprehensive link. It can be used for all broadcasts. Thank you for attending, and thank you for cooperating together to do our bit on the inner planes. Olivia, Tuija, and I, thank you for your sincerity and your cooperation. And this will be available before long on Makara. And please tell your friends about our work and suggest that they can go to the Makara website and find these programs and these meditations, and they can participate in their own way at their own time. I'm sure there are many people who can't make, the 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. time, GMT. So please do that, and we're all very grateful for our cooperation together. Many blessings, lots of love, all the best, and we'll be seeing you soon. Bye-bye.